Hello and welcome to day 3 of the Turbo Miata build. We had to kind of stop prematurely yesterday because didn't have oil crush washers for the banjo bolts on the water lines of the turbo. But now we stopped at the store. Got some crush washers for those, and those should seal up nicely. So we'll put one washer on the bolt head side and one washer on the turbine CHRA side. And those go on the 3 and 12 or 3 and 9 o'clock positions of the turbo. Before we get too far, I actually want to heat tape the hose.
So we heard some clunking on the front of the car.
We're getting passed by the sheriff.
Oh yeah! So in order to protect these lines from the extreme temperatures of the turbo, we're going to apply some of this cool tape to help insulate those lines. I'm going to start on the turbine side and work my way backwards. Oh, looks like I've made a huge mistake. What's new? Should get us hopefully far enough away. So there are two things that would have been really nice for Kraken to include, and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They were giving the water and oil lines sort of as a promotional thing, but it would have been nice if they would have included the copper crush washer for the banjo bolts, and then if they would have also included hose clamps for the coolant lines. I could not find either of those in my package. And it just slows down the process if you don't know that you don't have them until you're knuckle deep in a build. We are ready to mount the manifold to the engine. Alright, so since I'm running standalone fuel management, I don't need my EGR pipe anymore, and my manifold actually doesn't have an EGR location. So there is one bracket on the back of the block. I'm using a, 12-inch or 8-inch and a 3-inch extension with a universal. Come right behind the cam angle sensor and line it up onto there. It's a 10mm. The deep socket gives me a little extra length on here. I did bust it free already with a breaker bar. It was stuck pretty tight. Should be able to get this EGR pipe out of here in no time. The rest of the EGR connects into the throttle body located right. You can see one nut. The second nut is kind of behind this hose. And I'm gonna have to take this black bracket off, I think, in order to back the EGR nuts off. Looks like it's a 10mm. Alright, so shallow 10 worked pretty well. I'm gonna try to get at the EGR bolts. Those are also 10s. It looks like we'll be able to take that out of the driver's side, like so. So now that we have our EGR out of the way, and I undid the 14mm motor mount bolts, we're going to have to lift up the engine slightly in order to get the turbo and manifold slipped on. So we'll lift that up now. Hopefully that gives us enough room to slip the turbo manifold onto the engine. Okay. I'll sneak a nut on there. Okay, I'll take a little break for now. It looks like the Kraken manifold mounts the turbo forward a bit. I guess I don't know if this slot that we cut is for the compressor housing or if it's for the oil line clearance. I suppose it gives a little extra room for the oil lines, or the coolant lines. So, yeah, maybe we did run it in the right spot. And I just remembered I need to add the outlet adapter. So we'll be doing that again, which is fun. So the next thing we're going to attempt to do is run our water lines. The outboard line, which is away from the engine block, goes to this lower coolant fitting, and the inner coolant line goes to this upper fitting. So we will disconnect this little runner piece. There's a spring clip on the bottom and then a screw style clamp on the top. So we're going to start with this upper hose. See if that makes our life, this upper connection rather, and see if that makes our life any easier. So, after much cursing, cutting the clamp on the lower part, and using a pick to kind of dig, this is what that lower piece ended up looking like. I used a blade to cut that, slipped this under there, tried to loosen it from kind of around, and then pulled it up and it came out. So we now have access to where we're going to tap in our water lines for the turbo, and we can keep moving forward. So I'm in the process of tightening my manifold bolts, and you want to work your way outside to in. I did these two first, just got them snug, and then, you want to work inside to out, so middle out, alternating. I just snugged up the top so that it would pull it kind of flush. This middle one right here is really tricky. I had to come from the top to get it snug with like a needle nose pliers, and then used a 14mm wrench from the bottom to actually tighten it down. But that one so far has been the most difficult one. So now that we have the manifold secured, we're going to be running our oil drain line from the top to the bottom. I've got some heat sleeve on the turbo side. We will grease up the oil drain outlet a little bit, and then hopefully the drain tube will slip on there pretty well. Slip it on from the bottom here. Our hose clamp tightened down, which is an 8mm socket. I'm gonna try ratcheting wrench first. And go attach the bottom hose. So our oil drain hose comes by here, and we want to snake it without kinking. That, my friends, looks like a kink. Some length out of that, and of course I do not have anything. That is looking better. We want to make sure it stays off of the steering column thing. No kinks, not rubbing on anything. Looking good. One other thing I did do was run the new coolant hose from Flying Miata, and as you can see, maybe I went under my power steering or my AC line, and we might need to cut a little length on that hose as well because it has a small kink in it. So take about an inch off of that maybe. It should be golden. So I routed my oil feed behind the block, along the firewall, underneath the master cylinder, and up over here. You want to apply some oil to the fitting before tightening it down. You do not want to over tighten this fitting because they can be damaged easily. So I'm gonna get it finger tight and then do a small turn with a wrench. And then we are going to sleeve this with a 5/16 ID hose. This will protect it from any sort of chafing. So when you mount the turbo assembly to the manifold to the block, you're supposed to leave the outboard coolant line off. I actually mounted mine with it on, but I took it back off so that I could extend the heat wrap. But I'm gonna put it back on, and then we're gonna run both those lines, the inboard and the outboard, up over the lower radiator hose and inboard of the compressor outlet. And they will both go into the outboard will go to this lower fitting, and the inboard will go to this upper fitting. So the banjo bolts are 19 millimeters. I'm going to run this down and up like so. Then make sure you have copper crush washers on the CHRA side as well as the bolt head side in between the banjo fitting thing. You want to make sure the coolant hoses point towards the front of the car. I want to keep it just off the compressor housing though, I'm assuming that gets a little warm. Snug that down. Now we will run both of these through here. And they will both need to be trimmed significantly. Well, I think that length is going to be about right. But I'm going to need to try to find some sort of lubricant that's safe for water lines. Alright, so in order to slip on that coolant line, I used a little bit of orange goop. It's a waterless hand cleaner. Someone recommended that online, and it slipped right on. It was a heck of a time trying to get it on without that. Hopefully it doesn't clog anything in my coolant lines, but we've got one routed. Look it up a little bit. Snake this back down through that retaining one of these guys on here. We will tighten that on just a touch so it doesn't fall off when I'm shoving the hose where it needs to go. So in order to get that lower coolant line on, I took off the accessory belt by loosening the tensioner. Gave me a little bit more room to play down here. So now we can get our retaining clip on there and be on our way with the oil and coolant lines.